Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Epic Meta Podcast. Today, we'll be discussing a most wonderful topic, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Kahn. George, how's it going?
It's going great.
This is your suggestion, so
Yes.
I thank you for the kind offer, and I think this will be a most lively discussion yet. What um what do you have to say on the outset?
Okay. Well, in the past, you have repeatedly asserted that you are interested in action adventure films, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is clearly an action adventure film. It's sci-fi as well. But in my mind, this is one of the most perfect movies in that genre ever made. I mean,
Mm.
I know you feel differently, and that sort of irritates me. But I guess we'll get into that.
Yeah. The
Uh,
internet agree with you, by the way. I thought that after I watched it, I thought about watching it a second time, but I just couldn't muster the energy to do it. The internet generally agree with you. So there's two things I go by. One is the IMDb scores. Typically, if I go on a website and look at the movie, and this is like, let's say any movie that I might or might not watch like beforehand, I look at a trailer and I'm like, do I even want to waste my time watching this movie? I'll look at the IMDb score if it exists, um, just to gauge how good it is. And typically, when a movie hit a certain mark, like 6 or 7 or 8, I'm like, okay, that's good. I'll actually enjoy watching it because I've been burned before watching terrible movies, and
sure.
I always go to IMDb afterward. I'm like, oh yeah, why didn't I check? Because it's typically way lower. But so Star Trek 2 actually got really good. It's like seven something, and the internet had like I was watching YouTube stuff on it too, and yeah, people agree with you. It's really good, but I thought it was I thought it was a little bit not a little bit. It was definitely torture in some scenes. So
Why was it
uh,
torture?
the pacing was really slow. So the runtime for Star Trek 2 is actually shorter than the modern remake Star Trek Into Darkness, which you didn't like. That one, the runtime is actually, I just saw it here, 2 hours and 12 minutes. Star Trek Wrath of Khan was only an hour and 53. But I thought it was like maybe another 40 minutes longer.
Hmm.
I could not stand it. The opening was so bad.
The opening was? What do you mean by
Yeah.
the opening?
So the character review of Khan in the beginning, actually no, in the beginning, yeah, Khan. It was just like I didn't get a sense of context into his
Well,
background and how.
before we get before.
Yep, you still there?
Okay. Yeah. Before we get into that, let's just discuss the plot, just
Hmm.
to get that out of the way.
Sure.
Okay. So, um, okay. The movie opens with there's a training simulator for commanding a starship, uh, and you think it's as an audience member, you probably think it's really happening, but and everyone dies because they're attacked by Klingons. But it turns out it's just a training simulator. Um, but it introduced, and that simulation is called the Kobayashi Maru,
Yep.
and it's designed to be a no-win situation. The whoever's commanding the starship, there's no way to successfully get through the simulation without everyone dying. And so the person who was in command of that simulation, Lieutenant Savick, who's a Vulcan, she was kind of upset by this, and Kirk explained to her. Kirk is an admiral at the time of this movie. He explains to her that it's a test of character, and it's important for a captain to know that they might encounter no-win situations, and those are situations that they have to deal with. So at the same time, Kirk is getting older. He's an admiral. He's no longer commanding a starship, and he's clearly frustrated by that. His friends sort of suggest to him that he should get back to that, and he's kind of resistant to that. But he takes the Enterprise out on a training mission with the young crew, and there's a distress call that they have to respond to, similar to the Kobayashi Maru. And it turns out that so at the same time, this is getting kind of more involved.
Yeah, you could just say, it's basically he meet with Khan, but at the same time on a different planet, there was like I guess a research.
Yeah, so there's this scientific station called Regula One, and on that station is a Dr. Carol Marcus, who's a scientist who previously had a sexual encounter with Kirk, and they had a son together who also works on Regula One, and Kirk is not aware that he has a son in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
But on Regula, they are designing this thing called the Genesis device, which is basically it's like a missile that they can shoot into a dead planet, and it will turn it into a living planet. Now, of course, if this device were used on a planet where there are already living creatures, then those living creatures will all be erased in favor of the new living planet that it will create. Mm-hmm. So 15 years ago, prior to these events, and this actually takes place in a Star Trek episode. Yeah. So the background is there, should you choose to research it.
Yeah, I did watch it, but for the movie alone, you don't have to. But yeah.
No, you don't. I think the movie's very standalone, even though it relies heavily on Star Trek history for depth.
For that episode.
It does stand alone, which is part of its brilliance. So anyway, Kirk had a run-in with this guy Khan, and he, at the end of that episode, he sort of imprisoned Khan on a planet that was living, and Khan and his crew were allowed to survive there. Now, prior to the events of Star Trek II, there was a disaster on that planet, and it became kind of a dead planet. But because Khan was like had a superior intellect that was eugenically created, he was able to survive with his crew, but just barely. So anyway, Starfleet is trying to find a dead planet on which to test the Genesis device, and they come to that planet, which is SETI Alpha 5, and they think it's a dead planet, but actually they run into Khan. This is Chekhov and a Captain Tyrell of the Starship Reliant, and then Khan captures them and then puts these creatures in their brains that make them suggestible. Okay, so let's stop there with plot and just start talking.
They basically have a face-off. That's after that, it's pretty much just a fight, but space fight. So it's pretty. So
cool. Khan has always harbored resentment against Kirk. So his motivation in this movie is to seek revenge on Kirk.
Yeah, of all the Star Trek, I say, I guess, enemies or nemesis, he's the most individual. Like, I hate Kirk as I hate Kirk as much as it can get, because I don't think other enemies are personal that way. They just generally do what they do, and the Enterprise is kind of in the way. But this one particularly is, I hate Kirk. So my many things, but that whole sequence right there took, to me, it felt like it took forever, right? And then I just thought Khan was so comical. I was not, like, at any chance, like in any moment, ever afraid of him. And I thought that was just I don't know if it's like I'm pretty sure it's directing or writing, and it's not a. I mean, it is a critique, but you can't say it's the times because if you watch something else like Jaws, for example, which is like in the 1970s, the pacing is very fast. Character talks in a normal, what I call normal pace, like people just talk. But if you watch Star Trek, everybody was in this like, let me explain what's going on kind of mode and talk really slow. And I was just like, what is going on? Like, is everybody just, what is going on? And we couldn't get to where we needed, like just now for plot. For it felt to me forever. I didn't time it, but I was just, so that was my biggest thing to it. Did you, so you both you and me watch this movie, Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan, and Star Trek Into the Darkness, the modern remake, which you think is complete trash. Did you feel anything in regards to the both Khans, like any kind of fear, respect, anything? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, Khan in The Wrath of Khan is played by Ricardo Montalban.
Hmm.
Khan in Into Darkness is played by, I want to say Engelbert Humperdinch, but it's, what's his name?
Benedict Cumberbatch. But yes, you're not the only one. The internet have a lot of naming stuff for him just because of his name. Yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch.
Okay, in terms of the pacing, yes, The Wrath of Khan is slower than movies nowadays, but I thought every scene and every line of dialogue was purposeful and moved the movie along.
Mm.
In Into Darkness, I thought that it was all sizzle and no steak. It was all about action scenes, and there were lots of plot holes, and the I don't know. I didn't buy into the acting really at all, and because the characters weren't developed. J.J. Abrams moves the movie along so fast with action scenes that there's no character development. So I don't care about the characters.
But you did see the first one, right? Because I think he did a trilogy, right? 1, 2, and 3. And if you didn't watch the first one, you wouldn't know any of these characters anyway.
Well, okay. First of all, yes, I did see the
first one.
First one, and the same problem exists in that movie too.
Mm. I thought he did a great job building out the characters and like show individual motivation, like how they're all different from each other. But
I mean, I think he pays lip service to giving them motivations, but it's all ham-fisted. You
can say the same thing with Star Trek Wrath of Kahn without watching the TV series. You wouldn't have any clue with any of these characters other than at the beginning Kirk was an admiral and he was kind of unhappy.
I mean,
that's what I got from it.
I got to disagree with you there. I mean,
yeah. So that's my take on it.
You lose attention quickly when there's no action, and so you don't focus on those character points. I mean, I mean, not to be critical of you, I shouldn't say that.
Well, yeah, I mean, for an action adventure, which is true, I'm very action oriented, and if a movie doesn't, if thing doesn't draw you in, like there's no hook at the beginning, like fast, I have a tendency to withdraw, right? I have a tendency to move on, and the hook with with Star Trek Into Darkness at the beginning, I don't know if you remember watching it, but immediately Khan was shown to be a superior being instead of telling you, is that he offer his blood to cure cancer for this little girl, which turns out to be a daughter of a Star Trek officer, which turns out to be he basically, did a quid pro quo and asked this guy to be a terrorist and exploded this archives. So that was shown to you, and you're like, what the hell is going on? Who the hell is this? Like, he didn't say my name is Khan until, like, I don't know, a solid 20, 25 minutes in, and kind of explaining himself who he is. Whereas Khan in Star Trek of Darkness or Wrath of Khan, he was just I guess it was shown to you by Chekhov being like super fearful, which I thought was hilarious. At the same time, like he was freaking out. They found his abandoned, I guess, spaceship, and he saw what was it? Something Bay.
Botany Bay.
Botany Bay. He freaked out. He told this other Star Trek officer, let's go. Let's get off planet. Let's get the hell out of here. And the guy was like, what are you talking about? And then they got captured. But that whole scene, I was like, okay, like what's going on? And then they got captured, and it just, yeah, I just never felt that fearful. It was shown that he picked him up with one hand, and then I don't know. I just thought I think I was so distracted by the hair and makeup that I thought it was comical. I was like, this is the most badass like person or being in the universe. Like this is what you're afraid of, and I didn't felt the same. I didn't felt the same fear that I guess the audience or fans of this movie would felt the same. Yeah. Uh, Not my biggest pet peeve was Khan himself. So that was my critique, which I know is highly controversial because there's a lot of fans out there for this movie.
Well, okay, yeah. Khan was played by Ricardo Montalban, who's sort of, I, I don't know if you're familiar with Ricardo Montalban, but he played Mr. Rourke on Fantasy Island, which was a show back in the 70s. So you might not be familiar with that. But
No.
he's always played larger than life characters, and he's always sort of had an acting style that was formal and Shakespearean, I guess you could say, and yeah, I guess a bit comical.
Yeah.
I don't know. It worked for me.
Yeah. I know it worked for a lot of people too, but so that's my biggest thing. After they essentially capture and they start engaging in a fight, basically like a massive cat and mouse chase sequence through space, which was really cool. I actually enjoy that part. What's funny is the most memorable quote from the movie, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, was actually quite early on in the movie. I didn't know, I didn't know where that was going to happen.
Well, they
But it was,
explored it all through the. There were several themes that they explored throughout the movie, which is another criticism I have for Into Darkness is that
yeah,
okay, Wrath of Kahn was a action adventure film, but it also had rich, fully developed characters as far as I was concerned, and it attempted to approach philosophical themes in the context of a sci-fi action adventure. Whereas Into Darkness, I don't think, I mean, if they tried to approach a philosophical theme, I think it was just to pay lip service to it. And if they tried to develop characters, I think it was just to pay lip service to it. I think everything was
I don't think
in
it was
service
lip service like
of,
you say it
hold
is,
on,
but
hold on, let me finish my. Everything was in service of the ultimate goal of having, crazy space battles and action sequences. I think that was J.J. Abrams' primary goal in making that movie. It was not. It was not to develop the characters, and it was not to touch on philosophical themes.
Yeah, no, his I agree with you. It's just basically a cool, fun summer blockbuster movie kind of vibe.
But it wasn't cool or fun for me to watch it because I compared it to Wrath of Kahn, which to me is a masterpiece, and this was just like a pale shadow of
Yeah, I disagree completely. If you were to torture me, you would make me watch Wrath of Kahn repeatedly, and I would tell you exactly what you want to hear, and I would give in. But it was
if I wanted to torture you, I'd do that.
Because
that sounds like it would be torture for me.
Yeah, it was just basically it was just too much. It was just like, look, man, if you're gonna say something, just say it, and it just like over.
They
I
did.
would say yeah.
No,
they didn't.
Every line of dialogue was purposeful and efficient.
I don't know. I didn't get that at all. I thought they were just the whole subplot of him having a son and Genesis, I thought was just like, other than showing that um, Spock is different from Doc and they disagree with each other and how they're like 180%, like 100, 80 of degrees different from each other, from like pure emotional to pure logic on the concept of Genesis and basically life, wiping out another planet, etc. That's like that whole subplot of him having a son and going to that. I was like, that's just a device for them to actually meet up with Khan and fight. And I was like, why am I seeing all this? This is so unnecessary. I
Okay.
didn't care about his son. I didn't care about his affair with Dr. Marcus at all. It was just like, uh, what is going on here?
Want
Other
me
than
to
the
explain it to you?
sure, I thought it was. You said it was being efficient, but I was like, that whole thing was like so inefficient. It's like, why don't you just meet him and fight him? Kind of like the
Because the
new
movie
movie.
was about more than the two of them fighting. That
Mm,
was the context in which they addressed other issues. So
yep.
there's running themes throughout the movie. Why don't we just talk about this?
Mhm.
There was the Kobayashi Maru, which was a no-win situation,
Yep.
and in a sense, life is a no-win situation, right? We all die,
Mhm.
and we all get old. And so Kirk was facing this, although when Kirk took the Kobayashi Maru, he actually
Cheated.
reprogrammed the computer so that he could win
Yep.
it. So
Mhm.
he never faced death. So he never faced that no-win situation. But since life is a no-win situation, and he's getting older, he's approaching that inevitable fate, and
Mm.
he's trying to avoid it. And so he's struggling with that. Now, throughout the movie, when Lieutenant Savick complains that the Kobayashi Maru is a no-win situation and it's not fair, Kirk says, "How we deal with death is at least as important with how we deal with life."
Yep.
So, which is true because we're all going to die. So death is actually a part of life, and if we a very important part, and if we don't deal with that, then in a sense we're repressing or running away from a, a very large chunk of reality, and that never works well, you know.
Yep.
So another theme going through the movie is the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, and that's the logic. It that statement is introduced by Spock, who is logical,
Mhm.
but really, although they never say this in this movie, they sort of address it in Star Trek 3, um, which I would not encourage you to watch because it's not as good as Star Trek 2. And if you didn't like Star Trek 2, you're not going to like
Yeah.
that one. Um,
Yep.
but there's an interplay between the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, and also the reverse. The needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many or the few.
Mm.
And so this is the difference between Vulcan and human outlooks, right? The logical outlook is the needs of the many outweigh the few or the one. The human outlook, because we're emotional, the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many, and the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. so, so there's an interesting interplay between those two. And I was thinking about that today. It's not very logical to have friends or pets, but we have them, and why? Because we're emotional creatures, and
Why is it not logical to pets? I understand, but what about friends?
because you don't need friends to survive. You need them for
On the African plains, yeah. I mean, it's not logic, but it is logic.
in
So
in in modern day life.
correct.
You can get food, clothing, and shelter just fine without friends. But yeah, if you live in a tribal society, then yeah, you need.
Yeah,
It's
I
more
think
family than
whether
friends, but
correct. I think we are, whether you like it or not, like you said, humans and the way we were evolved, you know, the the instinct to communicate, I guess, form a community and be social, like social animal. So versus, I don't know, other animals out there that are solitary. I think it's baked into our DNA. So
Yeah,
logic or no logic, we're
right.
we're
But
built that way.
humans are not logical.
Correct. Not enough.
Vulcans, I believe, had an emotional past that they divorced themselves from, and
Yeah.
so probably in that emotional past they needed friendship and family ties to survive. But by the time they divorced themselves from emotion, they probably had reached a technological state where they, you know, where it was
So
akin to our modern times, where you don't necessarily, we do need those ties because
yeah,
life sucks without them, but you don't need them just to meet your bare survival needs, I guess is the point.
my understanding is that Vulcans do have emotions, but they're better at it than we are.
They're
And
better
either
at
they
repressing them.
yeah, either repress them, control them, or actually just not feeling them. Um, but there is not a procedure, but like a process. I forgot what it's called, the uh,
Hanfar.
Kondigar, something like that, where you actually go through, and as a Vulcan, once you through that, you're like really really not emotional anymore. And Spock was about to go through it, but he never finished, according to Wrath of Kahn, and so he's still, he likes,
I
I think he
think
likes working with Jim Kirk, so that he's like, you know he was pursuing other basically career interests, and then he came back.
Well, also
That was
Spock is half human and half Vulcan too.
yeah,
He
yeah,
identifies more with his Vulcan side, but he does have a human
yeah,
mother.
yeah, yeah. The compare that to Star Trek Into Darkness, there really is only one theme, which to me was sacrifice. So the needs of the many outweighs the few, but call it basically sacrifice, because Khan was actually driven, and this is the other thing that why I like this movie more than Wrath of Khan is his motivation in Into Darkness was protecting his family, which is the 72 corpses that we found out later was being he was being manipulated by this other admiral or general in the movie into compliant, into helping, basically making him do stuff like build starship, invent new technology, running war plans, because at the time the Federation was about to fight with the, I think, Romulans, but they have been so long away from actually warfare, they kind of don't think that way anymore. And so he was being manipulated by the whole time by this other general, into complying, because he was saying, if you don't do this, I will, uh, kill your family. So he was really ticked off, and that was his whole motivation factor through the entire movie, to basically save his family.
Mm-hmm.
So he to this is how, like, is a good bad character, like, because one, you can actually agree with his motivation or drive, is a means to an end. He's Kirk is not there. He doesn't hate Kirk or the Enterprise or the Federation until he was woken up. Like, that's not his whole drive. He is all about to get away. Like, he didn't care about them. Whereas, um, because he was manipulated, then he cared and hated, like, the whole Federation, in the whole context. Whereas Wrath of Khan, his whole thing was just to, like, get Jim Kirk, like, for no reason. Because there was a scene where his subordinate was like, "Hey, we got Genesis. We can go." It was like the end, toward in the middle of the battle, and he was just like, "No, I need to get this guy."
Yeah,
And I was like, "What a small, like, this is like, first of all, like, what is wrong with you? First of all, two, it's like, you're an idiot." So I was just totally, like, drawn away. But I could see the multiple themes, like, the needs of the many outweigh the few. For him, he needs to get Jim Kirk, which is his need, versus the needs of the many, which is his crew, to basically, be fruitful in a new planet. They never got that chance, and that dynamic was there. But I guess in that scene, I thought he was just a complete idiot, and what a joke. I mean, this is Khan, like the most badass being in the universe. Like, yeah, I lost all respect for him.
All
On
right.
top of like the hair and
Okay.
makeup in the
Enough.
beginning.
Stop,
Yeah.
please. Okay. Khan had a very clear motivation, which was to seek revenge on Jim Kirk, who marooned him on a planet, never checked up on him after the planet became uninhabitable. Khan's wife died because of the creatures on the planet killed her. So, the story is exploring revenge. Yeah, and if you see on the bookshelf in the Botany Bay, when Chekhov and Captain Tyrrell are in there, you see several books on the bookshelf, and most prominently displayed is Moby Dick. But there's also the Bible, Paradise Lost, the Inferno, and King Lear. But Moby Dick. So Khan is based on the character of Captain Ahab in Moby Dick. Captain Ahab's one goal, monomaniacal goal, as it's stated in the book, is to seek revenge on the white whale, Moby Dick. But what is that really? I mean, there's deeper meanings behind that too. Like, what does the white whale represent in Moby Dick? It represents more than just the whale itself. It could be interpreted as God. He wants to seek revenge on God for putting him in the tragedy that is life that he didn't ask for. But anyway, Khan is based on Moby Dick. So and Khan actually says several things. He utters several lines of dialogue that are directly out of Ahab's mouth during the movie. Like, from hell's heart, I stab at thee with my...
I remember watching that.
That's from Moby Dick.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's something else as well.
So Jim Kirk's with his white whale.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. Sorry. First of all, I didn't get that context, and even if I did, I thought when he said that, I was like, why did he say that? That's just like ridiculous. Just go shoot the guy. Like, why? No, he can't hear you.
Because life is more than action sequences. There's drama, there's humanity.
I say sacrifice.
And humanity requires a depth of character. It can't just be a mannequin put in the place of a character.
And I agree with you.
And slapping on a fake motivation, and then
that's not fake motivation. It was real. I think it's more real. I'm more connected to Khan by Benedict Cumberbatch, because I don't know if you remember watching his scene where he explained himself. It was actually like somewhat like, oh my God, I'm a little bit terrified scene where he's like, this is who I am. I'm a superior being woken up. Because there's a whole, like, I can't do it. There's a whole monologue, right? But it was actually really good, because I remember watching that and I was like, oh crap, who the hell did they wake up? Versus Khan in this Wrath of Kahn, it was just another dude, and he hates Jim Kirk and he wants revenge for all this thing that you said, which is, like, to you, way more emotional context. But to me, it was pettiness, because here he is with his whole crew. Here's the captured Genesis, which I thought it was, which we never got back to, was a whole plot devices. Like, I don't whatever. Just go get the technology and then leave, man. And they couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He couldn't get over himself. To me, he was he felt shame. It's not just about revenge of his wife and the abandonment of his crew. It was also the most shameful thing that he was being defeated by James Kirk, which is this to him most idiot, like, fool, like, jackass, and he needs to be defeated by someone better, and Jim Kirk is not. And so that to me was what was being told, and I was like, wow,
I mean,
an idiot.
Rage and revenge overtook his logic, right? I mean, that was his motivation. and we see Kirk
Yeah.
taunt him several times, saying, "I laugh at your superior intellect," and that pisses Khan off to go after him.
Yeah.
So
I guess that was too small for me. Like, it doesn't work as a what do you call it? Like trying to get somebody. I thought it was
he
in
trolled
the
him.
new one. He was, there was rage, but he was also doing it for his crew, which I thought was way more, I don't know, understandable. And it's like, why is this guy hating the Federation and want to kill everybody? Well, because his crew was in jeopardy, and it was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense, why he's so ruthless. Because there was like some epic brutal action sequence where he literally crushed somebody's skull, and that's how he killed them. And it didn't show on screen because it was too much, but you could infer that that's what happening. And he fought. He's very tactical in the way he fight. He took down like this female character, broke her leg for no reason other than the fact like to disable the crew. Because technically, like, I don't know if you, maybe I'm reading too much, but when you fight a whole group, you want to do stuff like that to break everybody down and disable them from moving as a whole unit. So he did all this stuff, and I thought, the stun gun doesn't work. When Spock did the death grip on him, or whatever the Spock grip is, he could like he like overcame it, which is like, what? How do you do that? That was amazing. So I was like, oh shit. Whereas Wrath of Kahn, they're just like, I guess, having like an intellectual, conversation through spaceship, and I was just like, get over it. Now that said, the whole sequence where he tricked them,
Where
that
who
was
tricked
cool.
who?
I like that. I didn't mind that as much. Jim Kirk tricked. I mean, both movies Khan got tricked. Both movies Khan got tricked, and the characters were different in the two movies. But Jim Kirk defeated Khan not by cheating, but by outthinking and or tricking him with space dimensional, and then he leveraged the fact that there was I guess a storm or some kind of cloud where the spaceship technology doesn't work because Khan's ship was better and faster. And at the time, the Enterprise was, I guess, broken down enough that they didn't have certain tools, and so he um, not diverted, but they had a chase sequence, and so they went into this cloud, which you have this battle, and then he outthink and outstrategized him, and that's how he defeated him. Is that what you thought, or how did you take it? How do you take that?
I don't remember the details of Into Darkness
Not
that
Into
well.
Darkness, Wrath of Kahn.
Oh, I thought you were describing Into Darkness.
No, I was
And
describing
I was
Wrath
going
of
to
Kahn.
say that the similar events in Wrath of Khan. Yeah. So the Khan took control of the Starship Reliant after he took control of the captain and Chekhov, who was serving on the Reliant, and he attacked the Enterprise and disabled it. But the Enterprise was able to get away because they were able to lower the shields on the Reliant and hit it with phasers and then run away. But so the Enterprise is disabled and the Reliant is sort of disabled, but is in a stronger position than the Enterprise. So the Enterprise goes into the Mutara Nebula.
Yeah,
and
that's it.
Inside the nebula, the tactical display, like their scanners don't work, and neither do their shields. So
Yep.
the Enterprise and the Reliant are sort of on par,
Equal footing. Yeah.
footing. And Khan is intelligent but not experienced in the commanding of a starship, and Spock noticed that his tactics represented or were reflective of two-dimensional thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So they were able to. The Enterprise was able to come up behind the Reliant and fire and basically disable it.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Epic, basically space dogfight. That was
Yeah.
as I said, that's the best I can come up with, a space dogfight. So yeah, no, that was cool. And then
But made all the more powerful because you cared about the characters, or I cared about the characters.
yeah, I care about the characters in Into Darkness too, and they did a few twists, right? So Sacrifice again was the theme where Spock. We well, I guess we can always come back, but at the end of at the end of both movies, there was a sequence where it was clearly there's a no-win situation, and now the decision is like how are we going to get out of this? And it has both situation in both movies had to do with the I guess nuclear engine room, where radiation is like crazy, and it was
Yeah,
basically.
they needed. I don't know about Into Darkness, but
Mhm.
in Wrath of Kahn, the Enterprise, the Genesis device was on board the Reliant and was
Mhm.
detonated. And if the Enterprise was near that when it exploded, then it would, they wouldn't survive.
Yeah,
So they had to get out of there.
yeah,
But they didn't have warp speed capabilities. Something needed to be fixed on the ship in
yeah.
order to get that. But they were running out of time. And so Spock went into the engine room, and he went into this room where there was radiation
Hmm.
and manually fixed something,
Yeah,
even though the exposure to the radiation would kill him.
would kill him. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was able
So
to do it in time, and they escaped.
yeah,
But at the end of the movie, Spock died. No, so what
yeah.
happened in Into Darkness?
The same sequence. It doesn't like I don't
But they
remember.
switched it, right? Didn't
Yeah, they
wasn't
switched the
Kirk going?
character, which I thought was wonderful because you see Jim Kirk being logical, right? And you're seeing Spock tricking Khan. So they switched the characters, typical, I would say, motivate or not motivation, but action. So it turns out that instead of Spock dying, Kirk is the one that's being logical and applying that reasoning and running to this radiation room to fix something manually. And of course, both movies have this emotional sequence where where the two characters oppose, like the two movies different, but they meet at that not door, but yeah, that door, and then saying goodbye to each other. And I felt emotional watching Wrath of Khan during that part too. um, and I actually felt that to you they were just basically little non-developed characters, but to me I thought that it was like, oh wow, he actually Kirk's actually doing something instead of just being loudmouth. And
Does Kirk die in Into Darkness?
so he's not permadead, but in that scene he did die. Um, so
How does
yeah,
he come back?
so how they did it is because they defeated Khan. So in Into Darkness, they twisted it. Instead of having a space dog fight, they tricked him because he wanted his crew. And so Spock actually used what Jim Kirk thinking strategy, I suppose, and leverage cheating and send him, because they can warp things and beam things. So send him his crew, which are supposed to be in these little space pods, because they were frozen. However, he encased them in because he was trying to get them off planet Earth, encased all these things, what looks like uh, missiles capsules. So Spock reverse engineered, took the actual frozen people out, kept them frozen, and then in that scene send Khan the empty space missiles. And so Khan thought he would win. What he didn't know that Kirk or Spock activated the countdown timer on those things, and they're gonna explode. So in that sequence, later on, both ship. This is near planet Earth, and somehow, miraculously, both ships landed, about to land on Earth, and of course Khan survived because he's super being, and they fought like physically have a battle, and then later they capture him, took his blood, reverse engineer it, and that's how they save Kurt. The doctor did it, so that's
Hmm.
how they cheated the last scene. But in the scenes before it, Kurt, like, you thought he was gonna die for real. So he did what he said was most logical. And then they say their goodbyes with the hand on the glass door. I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was touching to me, but I guess you didn't feel that way. You only felt that way in the original movie when they
I
say goodbye to each other.
I don't really remember how I felt watching it, but um, I my experience watching Into Darkness, I mean, in a general sense, was just disappointment because I was comparing it to how much I loved Wrath of Kahn, and
Yeah.
there were just too many disappointing parts in Into Darkness where like the plot didn't add up correctly, but
Yeah.
you know, we were made to be distracted by action sequences, so we didn't recognize that fact. You know that
Yeah. I'm not saying
that
it's a perfect movie either, but I enjoy it more. But yeah.
now it's my
What did
turn to
you
go.
what did you say that were so to me there was a you said there were plot holes. To me there was the biggest plot hole was Tim Kurt's son, right? I was like, that is such a subplot, like it's diverting from everything. I
No,
had
it is. Are you talking about Wrath of Khan?
yes. So that
No.
to me was the biggest plot hole or
Okay.
subplot that didn't end up anywhere. Like what was the point of showing that character?
Because Kirk felt old, and
Mm,
he was dealing with his own mortality, right? So throughout
gotcha.
the movie, he meets a son that he never knew he had.
Mm,
He his best friend dies, and
right, right, right.
his corpse is put on a planet that Genesis, life from death. Um, so it was all like in life, there is death, but there's also life, right?
Yeah.
So the son is a part of
The
that life,
new yeah, the
it
new life. Okay.
continuing on. So, I mean, it all fit together. Like there was no unnecessary detail in Wrath of
Oh,
Khan.
well, I guess that's like, but first of all, that son is a scientist. Never knew him. And I mean, they met and hugged and all that stuff and all good. But I was like, the whole time I was like, okay, this guy's not even in like the fleet. Like he's not even a Enterprise officer. Like I don't get it. Like he's not following his dad's career. They didn't even know each other. Like the whole thing. I was like, I guess I didn't get that theme of life and death, which is I thought it was like, you know, obvious to everybody, like you're gonna die. But I guess I guess
Well, no,
the
it is. Yeah,
whole
it should be, right. It should be obvious that we're going to die. But in our culture, we don't like to look at death. We like to. I mean,
to me,
as much as we intellectually know that we're going to die, you
yeah,
don't physically feel that on a day to day basis, right?
yeah,
You try not to think of it as much as possible. That you will
yeah,
someday Tang Cow will cease to exist.
yeah. No, I think of it like almost all the time. Not as much, but I compared to Into Darkness, they roll that sacrifice and death into one, and you see, you know,
But do you see this overall trend where like it's like in order for movies to work with people, they have to be dumber and flashier
so
and faster.
I would compare, I would not compare, I would say I would describe J.J. Abrams as the new Spielberg in regards to like action adventure, where things happen really quickly and there's not a
Action
lot of like
sequences,
action
but
sequences and adventure. Like
but not character development. Yeah, I
if you
mean,
look at
we had
Indiana
this.
Jones, what's the
We had
character development there other than the fact that he wants to restore and put things in museum? That's about it. Like there's
we
no
spent the whole movie with Indiana Jones. I mean, take out
like what did you want from character
or
development that
check
you thought
out
was short?
compare this. Hold on, Tank. Say that again.
So in you say character development that you thought it was short, right? Or basically, it was not enough
Yeah.
in regards to Into Darkness compared to Wrath of Khan. Like pick a few characters and tell me like what's not there that you saw in Wrath of Khan that was there.
I mean, again, I don't remember Into Darkness all that well, but my general impression was that I didn't care about the characters.
Mm,
And the same thing is true with J.J. Abrams' Star Wars movies. I didn't care about any of those characters either, the new ones. And
yeah,
we talked about this in our Star Wars podcast, so listeners, please
yeah,
go check that out. But this is a problem that J.J. Abrams makes great action sequences. I agree,
hmm
but he does not make great, satisfying movies from beginning to end
mm,
and he doesn't do character development well, and that's probably why they're not satisfying. And he doesn't do plots well. I mean, there's always he doesn't. His highest interest is the action sequences.
yeah. Which I guess it
And
speaks to me.
yeah, I mean,
Like the problem with Star Wars is like I never relate, but the problem with this movie Into Darkness is I guess I relate to Khan, and I Like he was the to me he was the main like driving force of the whole movie, right? Whereas the other characters were just basically running around. And I
Mhm.
guess that's what you sense or felt. And to me, that was fine because Khan was like the 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 main like Khan is the only person I care about. Whereas the other characters were just like there to entertain me and be funny and
But don't you
be
want Khan to
themselves.
be defeated? Like, isn't he the bad guy?
I want to know how Khan is gonna be dealt with, right? Because going to the movie, I was like, how are they gonna defeat him? And they did. They cheated. Spock, in this other universe, right, the modern universe, Spock basically made a phone call. He made a phone call and called himself from the future, the other Spock that they met in the first movie,
Oh,
and asked him
time
about
travel.
asked him about Khan and like, hey, how did you defeat this guy? And it's off screen. They didn't tell you, but essentially he said, be like Jim Kirk, and he gave him advice, and so he basically cheated. It's like Kobayashi Maru, and he's like, let me bypass the situation,
Hmm.
and that's how
That's
they dealt.
clever. That's actually clever. I don't
Yeah,
remember that, but that's clever.
yeah, because I thought so in the modern remakes they twist all the stories around, right? In this one, Kobayashi Maru in Wrath of Khan, Kobayashi Maru would explain. I'm not sure in the original series or the first movie that was explained, but in the modern remakes, they twist all that story around, and Kobayashi Maru was already explained in their first remake. So you kind of understand who Jim Kirk is and how he deal with problems. He kind of just run away, and in fact, you see that in the beginning of the movie where he got into trouble and lost his rank. He lost the Enterprise because he decided, which is now we actually get that theme, the needs of the few, where he saved Spock by destroying a planet because he reveals to them that there's a spaceship hiding underneath the ocean. So the whole mission was for them to observe this planet and leave, basically, film them and leave. But they decided to freeze a volcano that's being erupted. They decided to use Spock to do it, and then in the process, Spock was in danger, so they had to beam him up, but they can't. So the only way to do it was exposing the inhabitants of this native planet to the spaceship because they have to be in direct line of sight with Spock, who's during the process the volcano already exploded. He was literally about to die. He's just standing there
Which movie
waiting.
is this that you're
The
describing?
new one, the Into Darkness. So he basically sacrificed, the needs of the mission, which is to just observe to save Spock. Spock made a report. He lost the Enterprise as captain. He was basically demoted. So you saw that at the beginning, like where how he thinks and how he strategized is to save his crew first, and because he likes Spock as his friend, and Spock didn't get that.
Mhm.
There's a whole scene or a sequence where Spock's like, "I'm just reporting. This is a logical thing to do," and there's a whole like argument between the two characters, but Spock clearly didn't get it. He just didn't get it, and Jim Kirk was really. They were both like demoted and move away from the Enterprise, and this is before Khan was
Hmm.
attacking the Federation
I don't
in this.
remember any of that.
Yeah, because you were you were to me that the runtime is longer, but that makes so much to me that fill in so many things, right? And if you see Wrath of Khan, the crew was already together. If you didn't know any of them, it was too late. You only shown Jim Kirk being essentially like, "Hey, man, I'm old. I'm not cool. I'm not cool anymore." And maybe I'm downplaying it too much, but that's what I felt. And they were just like, "Dude, get over it. You're old, and you're old. It's like accept it." But
Well, I mean, come on. I mean that the story, the movie was about his journey through
yeah,
that challenge. I mean,
yeah,
that was the point of the story. So, I mean,
yeah.
get over it. And is
I guess I guess Khan speaks to me more than Jim Kirk's problems, which I guess they didn't cover that much in the new movie, and so I was like, yeah, I did not. It was they spent too much time on him, and which I understand because he's it's Star Trek. It's all about him, and the new one is more about the crew and Khan, and I like that more because I don't know, it was just the crew was there to respond to a situation where they were inept to deal with. Because Khan was clearly better at everything. Because he asked him, "What are you better at?" And he's like, "I'm better at everything." And he proved that. Like he can fight better. His DNA is better. He can heal faster. There was a scene where they were gonna betray him and stun him, which they did. What they didn't count on is him waking up like way faster than anybody else when you stun them, and he outmaneuvered them in this whole little action sequence. But yeah, I guess you didn't care for that. You
Well, I
needed.
mean, it speaks to how. I mean, that movie really didn't remain in my consciousness after I saw it.
Hmm.
Like I saw it, and then I didn't carry it with me.
Yeah.
Whereas Wrath of Khan, the original, has
Hmm.
stayed with me my entire life. I've seen it countless number of. It's one of those movies that I can watch over and over again and
Yeah.
not get tired of it. And
What
I was
character?
and I was so like I hadn't seen it in a while, and I watched it for this episode, and
Hmm.
I was really amazed at how engaged I was with it after all these years. I mean, it was
Yeah.
made in 1982, so it's not like modern CGI, any of that.
Hmm.
Um, I was emotionally invested in all the characters and the plot, and
Other than Khan and Kirk, were there other characters that you thought, they did really good on, like they
yeah,
delve into?
I thought Spock was great. I thought Chekhov was great with the creature being put in
No,
his
I
brain.
disagree with that one.
I thought Scotty was great.
Yeah, no.
I thought Dr. Carol Marcus, I mean, the whole relationship between her and
Yeah,
Kirk, I thought that worked as well. The
yeah.
son thing part was good too. I mean,
So,
I thought it was, I thought Khan's first officer, the
the guy that begged
blonde
him,
guy,
yeah.
yeah, I thought he was great too.
I thought he was a, I thought he was a joke.
Captain Tyrell too, I thought was good.
Really? You like
Yeah.
Captain Tyrell? He was the most like. I thought he was the most like. How do you become a Star Trek officer? What kind of training is this? You have no response. You're a complete idiot. I thought he was a joke, man. I'm sorry, but the
Well,
only
I
thing.
mean, he didn't succeed in the movie, but I thought his portrayal and I mean, I think he was a captain who was good for a ship that is not experiencing extraordinary circumstances. He probably would have had a fine career had this
Yeah,
one event not happened.
occur.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas Kirk is that extraordinarily good captain. You know.
yeah. I guess it's unfair because I expect everybody to be like Jim Kirk in this universe, right? Like where they could know how to deal with situation. And I
Well, I
thought
mean,
the only.
Captain Tyrell dealt with the situation as best he could. Under using normal
Yeah,
everyday tactics that a reasonably responsible captain would be
fair
able to
enough.
use.
Fair enough. I thought so. In Wrath of Khan, I thought Khan was good, which also was comical to me because he was too poetic and some of that stuff, which I didn't get. And then Kurt was good, but also dealing with all his, wife or extramarital affair, having a kid, and it's like, dude, it's like I don't care. Get over it. And then other than that, Spock was good, but the rest of the crew, like Chekhov, yeah, they were just all there for a distraction. It was all there to like, you know, uh, having subplot that leads nowhere.
Well, no, that's not true at all. I mean, he was
Why did you
clear.
think Chekhov have a good like
He
character building moment, or in that movie?
okay. So he had the creature put in his brain that made him suggestible to Khan's influence. But so he had conflicted loyalties. He
Mm,
wanted to be loyal to the Federation. That was buried down deep, and you saw that in Captain Tyrell as well. But he
yeah,
had this other thing in his mind that was controlling him.
yeah,
And so, okay, so Kirk and I guess Bones and Lieutenant Savick land in or beam to Regular One, and they find it. This is the science station,
hmm,
and they find that it has been abandoned, and so they're looking around the place, looking for people, and they find that Kahn had been there before them and had killed a bunch of scientists, um, and but they were still looking for Dr. Marcus, and they found Chekhov and Tyrell still on Regular One. They were like in some holding container or something, and they were like, Khan put creatures in our bodies and they tried to control us, but we we didn't betray you, or we didn't betray the Federation, blah blah blah. And so later on, Kirk finds that Dr. Marcus and a few other scientists and the Genesis device itself had been beamed into there was a chamber in the middle of the moon that the space station was orbiting, and so they had beamed down under there, and that's where one of the Genesis experiments was supposed to take place. So at the time, I was thinking, well, if Kirk and Bones and Savick figured out that they beamed down there, why didn't Khan figure that out? And they beamed down there, and then Chekhov and Tyrell held them up with phasers, and demanded that they hand over the Genesis device. So it was like they served that plot forwarding purpose that answered the question, why didn't Khan follow them down to the center of the planet? I mean, he had to use Chekhov and Tyrell to make that happen. So they served a specific plot forwarding device there. Yeah. That I was like, oh my God, this is a plot hole when I saw it. But then when I saw that was the purpose why they were left behind, and Kirk fell for it, I was like, oh wow, that's pretty good.
They were just there for that.
That's an airtight plot.
Okay. Did Khan really need a Genesis device to fight Jim Kirk? That's my question. He didn't really need anything to fight Jim Kirk other than the fact that the spaceship, the USS Reliant. After that, it was all good. Because before he even knew, I mean, I guess he'd learn about the Genesis device when they captured the Reliant, and I guess he would want it because they could start, a new planet and have his crew on there. But they met each other. But it's
also, it's an ultimate weapon.
They met each other in, I guess, during travels. It's like basically two spaceships seeing each other. And
what are you talking about? Who met who in space?
Khan met Jim Kirk in space, the U.S. Reliant. They were like basically two spaceships were basically flying towards each other.
No. They both wanted to go to Regular One to get the Genesis device. That's how they met. Yeah.
Right. And that's when they start fighting. And so the whole thing with him needing, I guess he needed a Genesis device so they could, have a wonderful life, but you didn't need it. You can just go to another planet. You don't need it. The only reason you need it is to wipe out humanity and wipe out Jim Kirk. That makes sense as a weapon, but that's not the only reason.
He wanted it. He wanted it to attract Kirk to him.
Yeah, but they already met before they even got there, so they were fighting each other.
No, they both met up at the Regular One spaceship because that's where the Genesis device was located.
Right. He was pulling Jim Kirk to him because he made Chekhov do that broadcast.
Yeah.
Knowing that he was gonna listen in. Right.
Yeah.
So my point is, at the end, when they actually was going down there to get the device, the only motivation left was to use it as a weapon or use it as a life generating device, and then have a planet of their own, because they were living on this abandoned, terrible moon rock with no life, and that was it. But other than that, they were fighting each other already. They already met each other or re-met each other. And they were already engaging in a.
He knew that Kirk wanted to protect the Genesis device, wanted it to not fall into Khan's hands.
Right.
So that's probably the only reason why he wanted it, was because Kirk didn't want him to have it.
But I thought that since he already started basically the cat and mouse game of space fighting, it was kind of like cool. I don't need to see all this other stuff, but that's the movie, that's the story, and that's fine. But Chekhov and like all the other people were just there, and if you didn't watch any of the Star Trek like original series, you wouldn't know any of them better than before you watch it.
Okay, and as much as you can criticize this movie for that, you can criticize Into
Yeah.
Darkness 100 times more.
Not 100 times more.
Yes,
the
you
same.
can.
No, even.
No.
No.
Absolutely, it is.
Why is it 100 times more irrelevant for all the other characters? Like Spock, Kirk, and Khan were the three main characters in both movies. Why is it 100 times more irrelevant for all the other interaction from one movie to another? I think it's the same.
No, because the characters were built more in Wrath of Kahn than they were in. What
like
do you mean,
I Doc and then the engineer guy, what was his name?
Scotty.
Scotty. They're both the same amount of irrelevant. Like they were just there to
Oh, okay. So you're not talking about the core characters. You're talking about the other crew members from the original series.
In both movies, the core characters are Spock, Khan, and Jim Kirk. Both movies. Bones is just there. Bones is the rest of the crew.
No, Bones is developed in Khan, definitely.
What is he like? What are you talking? Like, can you clarify or elaborate?
So he meets with Jim Kirk in the beginning, says happy birthday to him. He recognizes that Kirk is frustrated with growing old. So they have that conversation.
Yep.
We also know that Bones is sort of has an antagonistic relationship with Spock. We see that in a couple of scenes. So I mean, there's
that happens in Into Darkness too, right?
I'm sure they did it poorly.
Just because you didn't interpret the movie the same way doesn't mean it didn't happen. Like literally, he met with Jim Kirk. They had like a drink.
All right.
He said it's your birthday. I mean, it's like I know you don't want to celebrate because your dad died.
We have different opinions on this subject. I accept
it's not opinions. These are facts. You just said
but it's a fact that the character development worked for me in Wrath of Kahn and did not work for me in Into Darkness.
But the example you brought up are literally the same things that already happened in the other movie. Now,
so okay, this is an example of J.J. Abrams' ham-fisted lip service character, payment to character development.
How is one person having a drink with another person in one movie works for you, and then
that's the magic. That's the art of film writing and directing.
And I felt it was the other way, right? I felt it was super unnatural, and like, why is he like, why? I understand it's his birthday, but holy crap, get to it. And they were just literally just sitting there forever.
I don't know. Sometimes it takes time to build character development. And by the way, these scenes were very brief and very the dialogue was very, very tight. That's one thing I noticed upon this rewatching of it for me. Is how tight the dialogue was. How every line in Wrath of Kahn was. I didn't see one or hear one word of dialogue that did not move the movie along.
Forward.
I didn't see one scene in Wrath of Kahn that did not move the movie along. That wasn't purposeful and didn't have some tie-in towards the end. Or lead up to that. That's not the impression I got from Into Darkness.
Wow.
Into Darkness had a lot of extraneous stuff, and its main purpose was just a backdrop for action sequences, really.
Yeah, I don't know how.
So it feels like blasphemy to me to compare Into Darkness to Wrath of Kahn, and it's double blasphemy for me to say that it's better than Wrath of Kahn.
I'm not saying it's better. Well,
I guess you did say that.
It is better to me because even though it's longer runtime, somehow it felt shorter. And then the impact with regards to the character making a sacrifice at the end, I felt like Jim's death so Spock's death at the end of Wrath of Khan was like a big deal, right? I was like, oh crap, he like permadeath, like he's not coming back, kind of deal. Of course, in later movies he came back, but the point is, in that scene, you felt that, right? And it was
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
real termination of the crew. Like this is not going to be the same crew anymore moving forward. This is like an end of a chapter. Jim Kirk and Spock is no more, because you see his body being sent to this new planet, and it was a whole scene, and I was just like, oh wow, they did that. Well, in Star Trek Into Darkness, they kind of did the same. They didn't do that. You felt like it's modern movies. You know the character is gonna, it's a good story, good feeling story where the good guy's gonna live, right? And you kind of hoping and waiting for that to happen. However, in that scene, there was a twist with Jim Kerr sacrificing himself, and I was like, oh wow, look at this idiot actually knowing how to do something, or actually
Hmm.
applying logic instead of just being fundamentally wrong all the time and running around being Jim Kirk. In this one scene, he actually did the reverse. I thought that was very clever. Versus, like I said, the rest, Doc, uh, the engineer guy, everybody else was the same in both movies, just there to fill in the gaps. And
Well, I mean, there's some
I didn't
nostalgia
feel,
purposes as well. You know, we
yeah,
remember the crew from the original series. I don't know if
yeah,
you ever watched that,
absolutely,
but yeah. So I mean, it makes sense that they're all there, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I liked both of them, but at the same time, I felt the same way with both of them. Like, they were very identifiable, I would say. Like, the Doc is always very talkative, kind of whiny,
Mhm.
and I get that both
He's irascible.
correct in both movies. It was, I felt that, right, and then it was like this thing with him and Spock. I felt that in both places. So to me, I guess you felt the old, not the old, the original characters were more, better produced. But I have to say, if you never seen the original series, would you feel the same way, right? Like, do you think that
Um,
you feel the way you feel is because you felt you saw the original series?
no, well, with Wrath of Khan, and I think I made this point in the beginning, I feel like it's a very, very strong standalone film. I think the
Mm,
characters are developed just enough to move the plot along and to understand the stakes and to understand the protagonist and the antagonist and what
yeah,
their motivations are and all that. And I think it's done well enough to evoke emotional responses. So I mean, I think it works for me. I mean,
yeah.
I, I mean, I was going to say I'm biased, but I mean,
Yeah, we have
the
to find somebody
we're
to
all
watch.
biased. We're all biased
Yeah, we have
based
to
on what we like and what we don't like. So
we have to find somebody to watch both movies that haven't seen any Star Trek material
a
ever.
neutral arbitrator.
Yeah, yeah, because if you even see one episode, right? Because which is, I felt
Well,
for the original cast is too. Like I like the original Star Trek, but now that rewatching this, or because I've never seen any of the, I guess, movies, I've
mhm.
only seen like the show, like off and
This
on.
Star Trek 2 is the only, maybe Star Trek 1, but if you found this slow paced, you will turn to stone watching Star Trek
Yeah,
1. But
I
all
tried
the other
watching
Star
it.
Trek movies sucked.
I tried watching it to because I thought it was gonna be filling in like one two like a movie series, so I have to know what's going on.
No,
But no, you didn't have to. It was just very. I tried doing it, and I was like, all right, this is not happening.
I think they made Star Trek 2 in reaction to Star Trek 1. Like Star Trek 1 was too
Ah,
cerebral and too slow paced, and so they made
gotcha.
something that was more action and adventure. And Star Trek 2, I thought, was just the perfect melding of all that.
Yeah,
The following, I don't know, 30 Star Trek movies, including the J.J. Abrams ones, and including the Next Generation movies, they all pale in comparison to Star Trek 2, Wrath of Khan, in my opinion.
yeah. I've never seen the other one, so I can't compare. I've only seen the modern remake J.J. Abrams series. So, by the way, he only made the first two. The third movie was made by a different director. So you probably don't like it either, but I did, because that guy
Was
have a
that the one
tennis.
with like the motorcycle?
Yeah, Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. That doesn't
At
that
that
didn't
point, you
stick
already
in my
lost.
head.
At that point, it already lost you.
I mean, I
Uh,
think I watched it with very low expectations, and was probably entertained while watching it, but
mhm.
a week later couldn't recall any of it.
Yeah.
You know.
I
I,
just remember, I mean, taking that emotion or taking that feeling and applying to Wrath of Khan. The only thing I'll take away months from now, like let's say whatever episode, is how comical Khan is compared to the modern remake. I mean, you put me in a room with two of those guys, I would, be bent into shape with Benedict. Like he would kick
hmm.
my butt. Whereas
Yeah,
the other character, I was like, what is he gonna do? Quote poetry at me? It's just his hair was ridiculous. Like I was just not fearful of him. Even now, I felt his passion in getting Jim Kurt right. He was like, his face was melted at the end, and it was like, I gotta get this guy and push his
yeah,
button. And it's like, I felt that. Uh, I guess that dance, right? And both movie is actually a twist because there's Jim Kirk yell out the name Khan and because he was like partially defeated in the one scene, right? And I was like,
yeah.
I felt that. I was like, cool. In the modern one,
That,
it was actually Spock who did the
yeah.
yelling, so that
That's an
was cool.
iconic scene. That yell.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to watch both movies for that
Um,
scene
uh,
alone.
I mean, I can understand why Ricardo Montalban's portrayal of Khan didn't work for you. I mean, it was. I, I mean, I can't defend it, except to say that it worked for me, and
Yeah.
his over the top sort of Shakespearean portrayal of it just I don't know, it worked for me. It works with my aesthetic.
You're not the only one, right? Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of fans out there that loved that portrayal as well, right? Like I was trying to research into this, I thought I was the only. I was like, what's going on? It's like this cannot be the same Khan. Like this cannot be. And no, I wasn't the only one either with the internet. Kind of finding his makeup peculiar and
Well,
strange.
it was
But
made in 1982.
yeah. So if you avoid
I,
all the makeup stuff and just look
well,
at him as
I was sort of amazed at how well the makeup and the sets and everything held up, and the
yeah.
space battle scenes held up. Um, I, I, it, I mean, there
It's
is
not an
some
action
there.
event. It's not an action adventure. It's not an action movie that you would enjoy in the modern sense. No, I would, you know,
I would.
hmm,
I mean,
interesting.
there is some accounting for the fact that it does look a little fake by modern standards, but I, I think I thought it held up surprisingly well. Surprising to me.
Yeah, I had to try and not look at that stuff. I had to try and care about all the other stuff like plot and character. Uh, but I mean, I understand what was going on with the action, but I was just, yeah, it was literally trying to get through the movie, and Khan and Jim Kirk was the main core relationship or dance that I had to focus
Mhm.
in on, and it was the only thing that helped with that, right? Because Khan was clever. I mean, Jim Kirk was clever and doing all this stuff, and had to force I had to use all my energy to just look into that more,
Well,
and
Tang.
yeah.
Well, Tang. I mean, I cannot. I mean,
Yeah,
this is interesting.
one one
Your reaction to this movie was a little irritating. Was a
yes,
little irritating to me,
it's
but I
very
think
irritating to you.
our but I think our because I guess I wasn't expecting that. I guess
Yeah,
I was thinking this is an
I wasn't
action
expecting it
adventure.
either. I was expecting it to like, oh, this is cool, but
Okay, so there's that. But I think that the interplay of our personalities on these subjects
yeah,
is interesting in and of itself. So the fact that
yeah.
I was irritated, I think, might be good for us.
Which leads me to the last question or thought, because I had to kind of looked it up, but apparently it changes. So I noticed that in both series or TV in the Star Trek universe, a yellow shirt is command, right? It's like basically management or
Yeah, gold or
goal,
yellow.
and then red is engineering,
Hmm.
and then blue is science. Is that still true?
Uh,
Basically,
for the original series,
yeah.
Yeah.
or any. I mean, so it changes, right?
I think in the next generation, red was command, green was science,
Ah,
and blue was engineering.
okay, that's
And
confusing.
and then the uniforms that they wore in Wrath of Khan, they were all red, I think. Well, actually, the engineers had these white rubber suits that they wore, but
Yeah. Did they do that for a reason, or what was they just did it for the
I think
movie?
just the old uniforms looked dated, and they wanted something that looked
Updated,
a
yeah.
little better.
So my question for you is, if you were in the Star Trek, universe, where what department would you serve, or what would you do?
Well, definitely not science or engineering, so I guess I'd be command.
Why not science or engineering? Warp
um,
drives, cool, beaming people. You don't think that's necessary or cool?
no, I don't. I mean, that's not what I think. Is what I was
Uh,
about to say.
yeah,
I just don't think my
passion.
skill set
Hmm.
matches with those.
Yeah. I don't know. Skill set aside, I think I would enjoy the engineering and then the science division, because so they
That makes
put
sense to me.
yeah, it's fun. Well, to me, it's fun
No, no,
driving the
no.
space.
I think you're. I mean, and I don't. This sounds like it might be critical or insulting, and it's not. It's certainly not meant to be.
Yeah.
I definitely think your personality is would match those.
And would you switch? I mean, like, I don't know, theorizing. Have you seen characters in all of Star Trek universe like switch between the different shirts, or is that not allowed? Like, once you're in Star Trek or Fleet, it's that's it, man. That's your job forever. Um,
Yes, I think in Next Generation there was a an episode where Data was given. Are you familiar with Next
yes,
Generation? Okay, so
yes.
Data was given command of a ship, and he might have
Mm,
had a uniform change as a result of that, but
yeah,
it was a temporary thing.
cool. I love how I see. I never understood in a so it's just in research of this movie. I watched the movie, and then, of course, I went and watched the modern J.J. Abrams remake that you didn't like. I noticed they passed the con. Like, you have the con. Like, they constantly do this dance, right?
And
Because
it's arbitrary. It doesn't necessarily go to the next in command. It goes to whoever the
they
captain wants
like,
to give it to. Yeah.
yeah. So what is the con? Like, does it stand for something like conventional,
Com.
or
Isn't it command short for command? COM. Com.
oh, it's calm? Okay, I thought it was con, like CON. I was like, what are you talking about? Okay, so they have like command chair, so that's what it's short for. Because they like go and sit there, but yeah, there was, I don't know. That was the new thing that I noticed that did not happen in the
So
Jim.
it might have been interesting if we made the decision for me to watch Into Darkness as well as Wrath of Khan.
Oh, you
'Cause,
didn't watch it again to
no,
kind of
I
compare?
didn't
Okay.
even think. I didn't even consider watching it again.
I thought we both misunderstood. I thought I was comparing the two, because I can't just talk about this one without the new one.
Oh,
Uh,
I didn't care at all about the new one, and so I didn't even think about it.
if so now I'm curious, if I've never seen any of the new ones, how would I feel about this movie? And I think I might have to agree with myself. But at last, we have to find someone out there who never seen neither, and see how
Yeah,
they
so
feel
you
about it.
saw Into Darkness first, and then was comparing Wrath of Khan to Into Darkness, whereas it was the
Like, you,
reverse for me. I
right?
saw
You
Wrath
can't
of
help
Khan
it,
first.
right? You can't help it. But if you see
I
one,
still think it's the better movie, but I mean for lots of reasons, not just
yeah,
because it was the first one I saw. But
yeah.
and we discussed all those reasons already, so there's no need to rehash it.
Would you want to know what IMDb thinks?
Oh well, okay. Here's another subject that, and we're an hour and 24 minutes, so
Yeah,
let's
that's
just be conscious of that.
closing
But
thought. Closing thought.
you had mentioned IMDb. I don't like IMDb as a movie, like a pre-watching movie evaluation system.
Mm-hmm.
I much prefer like Roger Ebert's reviews of
Oh,
like
Throw up in my mouth. Oh my God.
See, okay, so there's a lot here. We should do just one episode on like
Roger Ebert.
No, on us.
Yeah.
Like, and the differences between the two of us.
Continue with. Is there another?
Well, no. I just think IMDb just like and Rotten Tomatoes. It's all about compilation of ratings, and it's like all it's numbers. And whereas Roger Ebert actually talks about the movie itself, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't get that from IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. You didn't mention
I agree. I agree with you. That's exactly it. Like if you're looking for, you know, a more thorough or analysis, then Roger Ebert and a ton of, you know, movie analysis is out there.
And
but if you're
Roger Ebert, he's dead now, but his movie reviews, like the written form of them, you know, is very short. It's not. Yeah. It's you know, like. But
I've read Roger Ebert's reviews before on movies I've seen. And I had to stop reading because I couldn't finish it. I was like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, dude, just say the movie is good. Go watch it. You don't need to be, like, in all this stuff. And then I've tried to read his reviews before watching a movie to see if it's worth my time. And I couldn't I was like, what? Like, what is your answer?
The New Yorker magazine has a nice, has good movie reviews, too. And you'd hate them because they never say whether the movie is good or bad, or they just sort of discuss quirkiness of it. And, you know. So,
Not for my universe.
You can get, I mean, they emit a vibe as to whether it's good or bad, and you have to pick up on that vibe, but they don't come out and say it.
Yeah, all right. Much more eloquent than a number.
Yes, that's true.
That's not what I'm after.
It's Spock versus Kirk all over again. All right, I think that's enough.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, listeners, for listening in, and we'll have to say our goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
In honor of Star Trek, live long and prosper.
Oh, yes. Live long and prosper.
Peace.
Hello, listeners. This is George with the Epic Meta Podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Did you know that you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and YouTube? You probably knew that one of those was the case, but the other ones are the case as well. Please be sure to click the like button if that's in accord with your reality. You can also share our podcast with your friends, give us a 5-star rating, and all of that. Please also give us your comments. Be very interested to read them. But more importantly than all of that, just continue to listen to the show. And as Thang would say, be good and be well until we meet again.